So Daredevil 2015, we are of course talking about the new 13-part Marvel Netflix TV show that I have just sat through in one session as it was released today, and I've done the marathon and I've done it. So here I am to give you my thoughts on this TV show. So this is going to be a kind of spoiler-free review, so I'm not going to go too much into the actual plot of it. So I'm just going to very, very briefly kind of give you a very small synopsis about what this TV series is. So it's obviously based off a Marvel Comics character, and this particular story is actually based on a particular retelling, which was a kind of a retelling of the origin story of Matt Murdock, played by Charlie Cox, who is of course Daredevil, or at least he becomes Daredevil throughout the course of this TV show. And it really sort of shows the kind of the early part of his kind of career as a crime fighter before he really sort of embraces and kind of gets his kind of, you know, iconic red costume, which you'll kind of see towards the end of this TV series. It's also peppered with flashbacks sort of going through how he's kind of adapted himself and how he got his powers, things like that. Gives you some backstory on his father and on his kind of mentor stick, things like that. We're also introduced to a variety of peripheral characters, most notably Foggy Nelson, who is his best friend, Karen Page, who is a kind of a secretarian, in the comics a potential love interest, and obviously the bad guys led by Wilson Fisk, expertly played by Vincent D'Onofrio, and his kind of henchmen. And really it's an origin of the Kingpin as well. I mean, he's an established criminal in the beginning of this series, but he's not really known to the public at this point, and it's really his kind of evolution as well to a certain degree. And really it kind of follows the growing conflicts between these sort of two groups of characters basically, and it involves a lot of corruption and kind of bribery. It's really a crime drama, this TV series, more than it is a superhero TV show. One thing I will say with this, if you've watched the Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's hard to believe that this is set in the same universe, because it is so different. If you can imagine Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is kind of Marvel's most hokey thing, then you've kind of got the movies which are kind of, you know, taken a little more seriously than, say, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then you've got this way up there, which is so much darker, so much kind of more realistic and gritty. I mean, there's brains running down the side of cars here, it's extremely violent, there's swearing, get a little bit of side boob, there's all sorts on this one. It is a very sort of adult based crime series rather than a kind of superhero series. So it's a crime series that happens to have a kind of vigilante in it, and the whole superpowered things are really toned quite down here. If you've watched the Ben Affleck movie, that gave the impression that Ben Affleck was, or Daredevil, his interpretation of Devil was a lot more superpowered, whilst this incarnation of Daredevil, he has got enhanced abilities, but they're not superpowers, and this guy takes beating after beating, and we really do see some damage being inflicted, and this is just of like henchmen and stuff. He has trouble dealing with just a kind of, you know, fairly skilled, admittedly, henchman, so the stakes are quite high here. Now, like I said, this is a fairly adult themed show, so there's a lot of involvement in kind of plot here in regards to the sort of the manipulations and kind of double dealings here, other players kind of getting involved. So it's not just, you know, going around beating up the bad guys and things like that you kind of may see in rival superhero shows. I guess the nearest one you can kind of put this near is more like Arrow in a way, but even that is a lot more comic booky than this one. I'd actually go as far as to say this series lends more of itself to the stuff like maybe not The Wire, but it's kind of going in that direction. And I guess maybe the Dark Knight, Nolan's Dark Knight film, it's kind of more in that sort of tone than sort of anything that we've seen TV wise, certainly from Marvel, and I'd go as far as to say that DC's as well. It is an expertly made piece of television here. If I go through it like piece by piece, so technically speaking, you know, I thought it was very well made. It was very well shot. It's quite a lot of it is shot in darkness, so if you're adverse to sort of dark screens and you have trouble seeing that, that's the one thing I would say. A lot of it is maybe you know, a little bit too dark for some people, but it's very well shot. It doesn't exactly have a cinematic feel. It is a TV feel to it, but because it's so well made, it's a quality cable level of sort of, you know, Walking Dead, Game of Thrones sort of feel to it, basically, where they've obviously spent money and you know, it has a sort of a quality feel to it. It doesn't kind of feel like it's all the same locations all the time, like we sort of see in some other kind of like more network superhero shows. The acting and the cast, I think, are all brilliant. They all do an expert job here. Charlie Cox, relatively unknown. He was in kind of Boardwalk Empire most notably before this, and I think he makes a pretty likeable Matt Murdock Daredevil. And one of the things I would say I really liked about this show is the relationships between the parties. The relationship between, for example, Foggy Nelson and Matt Murdock, I think, it feels like a genuine friendship. But the ones I really want to focus on here is the bad guys. Now, Vincent D'Onofrio plays the Kingpin, or he's never called the Kingpin in this, is what I mean. It kind of plays down the comic book stuff here. But, you know, Wilson Fisk, who is ultimately the Kingpin in the comics, and he is such a kind of multi-layered villain. It's an absolutely inspired performance, and he's so well written. He's not exactly... He's kind of like... He has so many layers to him. You don't exactly sort of wish he would win exactly, but you kind of... He's so interesting to watch. You almost want to see him succeed because he's such a sort of multi-layered character, and it's such a sort of nuanced performance, basically. I thought it was absolutely amazing. But the thing I really like about him is his relationship with his peers, in particular two people, and that's his kind of his love interest, Vanessa. In the comics, I believe they actually become man and wife, and again, it builds up this kind of romance between the bad guy ultimately and his sort of love interest. And you don't really see that in kind of for the bad guy so much, but it's a very believable romance and a very believable relationship, and you kind of want to see it succeed. But the other thing I think may get overlooked as well is his relationship with his kind of right hand man Wesley, and again, it's just a fantastic relationship these guys have because they are just friends. These two guys care about each other. And again, you just don't see this in the bad guys normally. Normally, this sort of, you get your kind of bad guys and they're just shooting their men, and that does happen to be fair. But it's rare that I think you see genuine friendship and genuine relationships from the kind of the bad characters, the villain characters, and I really really like that. The Kingpin isn't the only villain here. There's a variety of other sort of factions, criminal factions that are involved, the Russians, the Chinese, the Japanese, and there's hints that basically larger things are involved there. There's hints, for example, on the Japanese side that they're actually the Hand, and there's kind of the Chinese may have kind of some kind of mystical stuff which is kind of left maybe for future seasons and things like that. There's a couple of hints at the larger audience. Obviously, this is meant to take place in the kind of the wider Marvel universe, and the kind of the events of the Avengers film are referenced here, but it's never really beaten over your head with it. And I think it's only there. It's kind of referred to as the Battle of New York, so they never really say, oh yeah, there was aliens and all this kind of stuff. So you can kind of, it just kicks that sort of level of realism here. The fight choreography, I think, is fantastic. The one thing I would say is, like, I kind of touched on it before, is that there's not loads of action here. Some of the episodes, there's 13 episodes, and some of these episodes really don't have any action, and some of them even play more like a courtroom drama, and it really does focus a lot on the kind of the legal side, because obviously Matt Murdock is a lawyer by trade. It focuses a lot more on the kind of that sort of the legal wrangling than maybe you'd expect, especially if you've seen the Ben Affleck film. So there's a lot more of the kind of the legal stuff and that sort of stuff going on than initially you may expect as well. There are a few hints at other characters potentially again for other seasons. There's one downside I have with this particular TV show, and it is to do with Deborah Ann Woll, and basically it's her character Karen Page. Now, to be clear, I don't think she does a bad job in this character. However, she has this kind of plot line going along a lot of the time, and she kind of teams up with Ben Urich for a lot of this TV show. And if you know Ben, he's actually a character from the comics as well. but they spend far too much time dealing with this kind of subplot. Suffice to say, I actually start rolling my eyes when they're on screen. I just know it's this plot just goes on and on and on. And mild spoiler here, it really doesn't go anywhere. There's no real payoff for it. And it's not that they've done a bad... She's not doing a bad job at acting, she acts well, but unfortunately this part, I feel, is just written for something for her to do, something for her character to do, because she's not really involved in the actual superheroics at all, to be quite honest. And it just feels like they kind of need to have a female member of cast doing something, so they kind of get going on all these sort of, other sort of B-plots, basically, along with kind of Ben Urich, who's kind of the, again, another sort of supporting character. And it is very, very dull. Those parts are dull, I'm afraid. In my opinion, you may disagree. Let me know if you think you enjoyed those parts. So that's the one bit of this TV show where I felt it was kind of stretching a little bit, just for sort of for padding, quite honestly. Rosie O'Dawson's in this as well, and she plays basically the night nurse, which is again is a kind of Marvel character who, she plays an adaptation of it. Basically, who's this kind of nurse who patches up heroes, and she's not in it as much as I would have liked. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of her in it, because I think her character and her relationship to Matt Murdock was far more fascinating than the kind of the time when we spent with Karen Page and Ben Urich. So I would have liked to have seen that a little bit more developed. I mean, whenever they're on screen, it's fantastic. But overall, that's the only real complaint I have about this TV show. Everything else, from the production values, from the look of it, the set design, the acting, the plot is with that bit aside, is very, very good. Very sort of complex, very adult. It kind of makes a little, it does fall into a few cliches here and there, but that's nitpicking. But this is a fantastic TV show, and it really raises the bar going forward. I wonder how you can kind of really look at Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., even though that show has improved, and think, how is this in the same universe? Because they're so different. And it really kind of, when you put these two shows side by side, you really notice the quality difference here, unfortunately. So it really does make Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. pale into comparisons. There's a little bit of a drinking game for you I have here as well. Have a drink every time they tell Karen Page to go home. You'll be pissed, I guarantee, if you're marathoning this. So I'm going to give this TV show a 9 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think any Marvel fan will enjoy it without question. But even if you're not a comic book fan, and you like the kind of the crime dramas and the kind of the police procedural stuff, you'll like this, because it plays down the kind of the sort of superhero-ness. Even when we see sort of Daredevil's powers, like I say, they're sort of toned down. We don't get the very obvious radar sense like we did with the kind of the Ben Affleck film. So 9 out of 10 for me. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm very much looking forward to Jessica Jones, which is the next Netflix series. So have you seen it? What do you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.